I have been trying for, over a week. I've been trying to write this blog that, I started thinking, okay, how am I going to write this for a book? And then I thought, okay, that's a little overwhelming, so I'm just going to start with a blog. Because a blog, I can shorten it up, kind of maybe create the framework of how I would write it in a book. And clearly, in a book, I would be more detailed. I would try to include more science and references. So anyways, every time I sit down to write this blog, I'm so bored. And then I go back to read it and it's so boring. But it's necessary. It's like fundamentally necessary to understand why we feel like losing weight and being smaller and eating purely and whatever the means to that end is, why it feels like life and death, why it feels like so horrible to think about staying and being or gaining weight, staying fat, removing, you don't know. Okay, so if I were to, I have to explain this. It's so hard. But it's really not hard. It's not hard in here. It's not hard in my head. But when I have to translate it, I'm struggling for some reason. So to the point of this video is to see if I can explain it to you in a conversation. And then to be able to then translate it into written word. And then to be able to expand into the detail for a book. So here we go. So the basic fundamental concept here is that we as a species has evolved. We evolved over 12,000 years ago for thousands and thousands and thousands, not millions of years, to survive this environment. Yeah, this environment. Not this one. We did not evolve to that. We evolved to whatever you see out there, which is mountains. And not even farmland. So when you look at how we evolved to survive and how the human species evolved, it wasn't with mass crops and trade and whatnot. It was in small packs and tribes of human beings. They say somewhere around 20 to 40 people a group. And we, for the most part, foraged and hunted and lived off of the land we were on. And death was very common. We were killed by other packs of humans, other animals. Here we are in our life of today. I'm probably getting radiation as we speak, not just through my earphones and my phone, but through whatever that is. I think it's a cell tower. Anyways, I digress. So we evolved and to learn, what fruits and vegetables or grains, or not even grains, it's nuts, seeds, roots, animals, that were healthy and our palates adapted and our taste buds changed and our eyesight became incredibly adapted to see threat. And anyways, so in long story, really kind of long and confusing, we evolved to recognize psychologically and unconsciously and emotionally that we needed other human beings to thrive, not just to reproduce, but I would have died on my own. Even if I had food and weapons and self-protection, my likelihood of death was much, much higher alone than it would have been even just with one other person, let alone a group of 20 to 40. So today, in the environment we live in, I mean, look at how much human contact we have, not just in the communities we live in, right? So that community down there, this is, I don't know if you can see it, all those homes creeping into the foothills, that's my community. I think there's like 700 homes in there. So you can imagine I'm still living with over 1,000 people, I'd assume. That wasn't necessarily what our brains evolved with. And even if it did, the more people you were around, maybe the more risk there was in terms of stealing and, social norms breaking down or whatever. So when you look at what we live in today, it's just incredibly different. I mean, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of people around us. The human contact we have is not just with the people we're physically with, but just look at how much contact we have with different people in social media, television, those two alone. And what's very unique about that is we're not just in contact with other people as individuals, we're in contact with different cultures and cultural belief systems, cultural ideology, different systems and paradigms of thought and religious beliefs and spiritual beliefs and political ideology. And we're talking on a global landscape, not just in like this little area I'm in. So the discussion in social science is that we are having an evolutionary mismatch, not just biologically with living in homes and without the sun and our cold and heat and foods that we eat, but psychologically the mismatch in terms of how much contact we come in with the human race around the world and different cultures. So when you look at the evolutionary psychology and needing to be safe in a pack or with a group of people, it's a lot easier to calm those survival mechanisms when you live in a smaller pack where beliefs are predictable, environment is predictable, and the other side of predictability is repetitious. That our thoughts and beliefs and our brain wants repetition. So when we are engaged in a social environment that is global, there's not a lot of repetition, except for the fact that we have an economy nationally and even globally to a certain extent around body image in particular and wealth. So there's a lot of discussion in terms of the fact that we have symptoms, especially in America, of social insecurity and social survival insecurity. So we have an epidemic of social syndromes, depression, and social calming addictions to opiates and things that calm and allow people to feel better socially, like alcoholism. So, as we continue to see these epidemics of behaviors and coping mechanisms, they believe that this is a sign of evolutionary mismatch psychologically. And some of the systems we're exposed to on a daily basis, such as thin supremacy, food, religion, food ideology, those two I'm in particularly interested in, and also religion, because I am recovered from religious ideology, that those specific beliefs keep our survival mechanisms inflamed. And when those mechanisms inflame, you're basically inflaming fight or flight, which is like survival mode. That affects your heart rate, your thyroid, your adrenals, basically your stress response. That we might not necessarily be physically being as taxed as much as we are psychologically because of these open loops that are not getting closed in the perception of social security. You bored yet? But for those of you who are really interested, like myself, in terms of like really seeking and opening yourself up to why we have such an epidemic of eating disorders and dieting obsession and the worship of body image on such a microscopic scale of the itty bits of fat on this type of part of your abs, or the fact that people are afraid of disease when there's far less than there's ever been, and all of these bizarre symptoms. And like, really, does the human body need us to micromanage our macronutrients for it to be healthy? And isn't that a symptom of someone who is in fight or flight? So should we be encouraging these behaviors that are directly tied to someone who's inflamed because of the response of fear of rejection and abandonment, disapproval? It's actually very simple, but it's kind of complicated. Simple and complicated. And what I found is that when I work with someone and I just hone in on, the beliefs around body image and social approval, that it completely it completely dissolves on its own. It doesn't take complicated thinking at all. What's making it complicated is the fact that I'm trying to combine kind of this science of the brain and inflammation with the social environment that we live in. That makes it sound complicated, but it's actually not. So it's just boring. Here's my pack. Hi, potato. All right. That's enough for now. Thanks for listening. Why can't